We're gonna give you the easiest agility drill that you can apply to your training, and we're gonna start right now. I'm Olympic strength coach Dane Miller. I've coached at multiple world championships. I help coaches, athletes work towards becoming state champions, All-Americans, and even getting to those Olympics. And one of the best parts around this specific video is that you're gonna see the easiest way to change and improve your overall sports performance. We went down to Oklahoma. We learned from one of the greatest speed coaches on the planet, Michael Drach, and he's gonna help you improve your agility.
Acceleration time. The principles still apply. Force, ground contact time, and the direction of the force, but it's gonna be different, okay? You've got, what do you weigh right now?
230.
230 pounds at a standstill that you need to get moving in one direction as fast as possible. So the force is gonna be way higher, and you need more ground contact time to generate that force. So that's gonna go up.
I immediately have the visual of that time that you pointed out.
And so this is, a lot of athletes come in and they got a decent first step. We're gonna go over that in a second, but it's the direction of that force again, and it's the second and third steps where that usually gets messed up. And so what happens is, back to my stick figures here, is I'll do a bad first step with an athlete where they're kind of bent over, right? And so, you know, they've been coached like I was early on, you know, get low, get low, get low. Yeah. And so what they do, they get hit in this position, and they're forgetting how to load the hips, to launch from the hips. And so when that happens, you kind of obviously are going to get a way lower knee drive, and I usually get a foot that kind of casts out in front. Okay, that's a horrible drawing, but you can kind of get the idea. Yeah. And so now we're getting the same kind of thing as before, is that foot's going to be striking in this direction. Mm-hmm. And that's, especially in acceleration, that's really hard to keep moving in this direction. So now my foot hits here out in front of me, I have to roll over it, you know, and I have to here, now I got to push extra hard to kind of keep that going.
It's like overcome the brake and then push harder to accelerate.
And so even if they have a decent first step where you're going to have more, you know, this motion, so you got ankle, knee, and hip all coming through, you know, that's a really high hip, but a lot of times they still don't get the knee very high. Okay, so they have a great launch, then all of a sudden that knee doesn't come very high and the foot's still casting out in front, and they're still landing out in front. Yeah. And so this is where, you know, the wall drill comes in place, and almost every athlete has done the wall drill, but they don't quite understand why they're doing it. And so I'm gonna teach you that in a second. But we have to load that hip. Same thing as before, we have to load that hip because I need space between the ground and the foot. I can't get space between the ground and the foot unless I get proper hip flexion. Right here. And now, same thing, this hip is generating force, moving that thigh and foot down underneath us. And we're gonna land closer to our center of mass. You know, your elite sprinters are landing that first step here. Yeah. Most athletes are gonna be more here and here. Yeah. But the direction of that force, and not only just the direction of the force, but that force is gonna spike right away. As soon as you hit the ground, you're putting that force in the ground, opposed to a longer foot contact. Right. So let's get you on that wall. So, well, I want good position. You're in line. The hips and butt aren't sticking out. Now bring that knee up as high as you can for me, and I'll grab the foot and I'll move it in this position. Okay. So right there. Now from this hip, think through this hip. We're striking back. You don't need to go that hard, but think from the hip. You're striking back right there. Load from the hip and strike from the hip. Load from the hip and strike from the hip. That is essentially, you can rest. That is essentially what I'm looking for when I'm watching the athlete, is are they loading that hip right? And now every athlete's gonna be a different height, but that's okay, but are they using that hip to strike back into the ground?
It's funny because when you held it there, I felt like my hip was dead. Like I was like, why is this so hard? And then like, I felt like because I kept thinking about it, I could get it going a little bit more, and I feel like that could be a microcosm of an athlete's week or 2 week adaptation.
Oh,
like,
sure, yeah.
They may have, like, dude, that was really hard, and like me feeling that could be something where for a younger kid who may not have as much body awareness, it takes some time, but then all of a sudden the hips are actually firing, and that's where it comes into.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. There's so many. Speed trainers, I guess, kind of like differ on the thought of, you know, do we coach hitting the ground hard and pushing? And I'm like, yes. I'm like, but we have to learn how to load it first, otherwise to be able to do it in the right way. Because I can push hard behind me with bad mechanics and still be decently fast. But like I shifted my training with these athletes is I don't focus a ton on that force early on. I want them to feel that hip flexion. I want them to understand that they got to get here so they can strike back into the ground with that foot. And so like I'll even overcoach it sometimes, like lift, get the knee up. And like, I know a lot of coaches will disagree with that, but I found with my athletes is like early on, if they can get used to here, man, that force all of a sudden, especially with the 1080, the force comes, and all of a sudden they're getting a lot faster.
Michael, so my big question now, with acceleration, and my hip is spasming currently right here. It's doing like one of those things like, how do we take, let's say with an athlete, either a D-back or a wide receiver, or maybe even a basketball player, if you're looking at like fast acceleration, now let's say they're running a route and they've got to hit and plant and cut. How do you take someone from learning those accelerative mechanics to decelerate and use those eccentric forces? That's one thing too. On your website, you are the master of that. That was one thing. Like, if you could clarify what that is and how you train that then as well with the change of direction stuff.
Yeah. So if I get a new athlete in here, I'm going to teach them my philosophy on change of direction, and it's 3-point. Here, let me erase this real quick. Number 1 is outside plant foot. So I'll just call it outside. Number 2 is inside plant foot, also known as penultimate step. And 3 is your decel, okay? And so all of these are eccentric loaded. How can you spell that right? Okay, so let's go into detail on what this means. If I have a new athlete in here and I'll explain this on the board, and they usually have no idea what an eccentric muscle contraction is. So I'll explain that to them. I'll usually get their biceps. So like, here.
Can you get this one right here?
That one right there. That one's probably one of the bigger ones I've worked with. So I'm like, okay, you got a bicep muscle. It kind of attaches in here and attaches here. So you have these long muscle fibers. When those muscle fibers shorten, that's concentric. It pulls that lever up, okay? Now, eccentric is, let's say you got a dumbbell and you're gonna go slow on the way down. That muscle is still working.
I'm like pushing into your arm, like trying to flex.
So like the muscle fibers are lengthening, but it's still working. That's eccentric, okay? And then isometric is you just hold it there. Muscle fibers are staying the same length, essentially, and they're still working. And so it's like eccentric loading is, think the lowering of a squat, okay? I'm going down, or I'm like landing on a jump. That's an eccentric load. So how does that look into a cut? I'm going into a cut and I'm planting my foot. It's that eccentric loading, okay? So think of your body as a spring. A weak spring can't handle the force. A strong spring will be able to handle it. And so I was like, how do we make you handle faster eccentric forces? How can we increase the strength of that spring? And so I get into the details, first of all, the mechanics, and I'll start explaining, okay, the outside plant foot is, you're gonna use that most often in a game. No matter what sport it is, I'm gonna be running, even at like lower speeds, that outside plant foot's gonna be hitting. It's what I'm gonna use most often in a game or practice. But now I'm moving at a certain speed that I can't just stick my foot out there because the force is gonna be too high. The speed's too high. Yeah. So you're gonna use the penultimate step, or the inside plant foot. That inside plant foot's gonna hit to take the load off of that outside plant foot. Now, a lot of athletes are not good at that. They just wanna put their foot out there and stop. And if that leg that you're putting out there can't handle the load, injuries happen a lot of times. And so if you can teach them how to get into position to where that inside leg can take the load off the outside leg, that outside leg is way less work, but it's also gonna be a faster cut. Yeah. Then I'll explain, okay, now I'm running at a certain speed, inside leg and outside leg can't handle it. So what do? We have to decelerate first, get it under control. So that decel, you know, you see like a wide receiver chopping down, that's decel.
Almost like lower in there.
Yeah, and so that is still eccentric loaded. So all of them, it's not just eccentric loading, it's fast eccentric forces. And so you can do stuff in the weight room. I found it more effective is to load it up with a bungee or a 1080. Okay. So you're pulling them into the cut faster, and you'd be surprised, like it instantly kind of they have to get their body in the right position, otherwise they're going to kind of like trip or fall over.
Right. And that's where you see like you do use your like bands and stuff
Yep.
quite a bit in that,
A lot.
case. Okay.
And so I will do this drill that I explained with my athletes maybe for a month before we actually do any other kind of fun agility drill. Like I want to build up that foundation and the ability to handle more forces. Like a lot of times we run out of time too. It's like I don't have a lot of time to do all these drills with them early on because we're learning at first. And so this is what I'll put you through it, Dane. So go ahead and stand right foot here, left foot even with the orange. Okay. So kind of squat down for me, and I'll do this. I'll be like, okay, push into me. Kind of hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, why was that hard? Well, you had a force pushing you this way, and you had vertical shins. You weren't able to produce a horizontal force. And so now squat down again. Okay, now lean into me a little bit. Keep that left foot where it was. Yeah, squat down lower, and now push. Right there.
Yeah, that's easier.
Okay?
I feel like I just hold that.
That just by changing the position and the angles, like you were able to put more force in the ground. So that's the position I want them to go to have in a cut. So now do this for me. Squat down again, straighten your feet. Shift your weight to your left. Okay, from there, do you feel the pressure change on the foot to the outside of the foot?
Yep.
Pressure to the inside of the foot?
Yep.
I teach them to be aware of the pressure of their feet into that cut. Because if the pressure starts to shift too much to the outside, that tells me that the shin is shifting positions. And so I'll tell them, you want to put pressure on the inside of that foot, that big toe joint, outside of that ball of the foot.
Okay.
And so just by teaching them the pressure of the feet, it helps them understand the angles better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Immediately feel that.
So now this is the next step. Okay, go ahead and go left foot even with this green cone facing this way. So other foot forward, right foot forward. So I'm gonna teach them inside plant foot first, outside plant foot. I'm gonna go right into that. So what I wanna see is you're gonna come in, I want left foot to come even with that orange, right foot even with the green, and we're gonna hold this position. So knee outside of that, shoulder outside of the knee, okay? What I'm looking for is I wanna try to hit outside ball of the foot. Because then you can get a little bit of that calf muscle too as a shock absorber to slow you down a little bit.
Okay.
If you're doing it really well, you can kind of stop on that inside plant foot. Yeah, just like that. So then I'll tell them, okay, let's go here, 1, 2, and hold it. And then come back, do the same thing again, 1, 2, and hold it. Good.
It's interesting how much like, it's like, this just makes me feel like it is skillful. It's a skill.
It is a skill,
and it's like
100%.
You learn the skill and you're teaching kids, let's say 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, how to do these simple drills.
Yep.
And you teach them also the logic behind it and the carryover.
Yeah.
And it's like all of a sudden you get a kid who's like, okay, we got to run this route. Or it's, 3rd and 10, their tendency is that their receivers are going to run this route, and you can make the read. And because you have that skill, you're faster.
Absolutely. It is a skill. And then, I mean, from there, like, if you can understand,
It's fun.
it is fun. Well, wait until we get some 1080 pull on it. So from there, I'll have them go that position to a hold to a shuffle back. And now this is where we go into striking the ground. Okay, the simplest, quickest way to improve that spring is to strike the ground or pre-tense. You think like you're doing trying to do like pogo jumps. You kind of want that pre-tension, the brain telling the muscles and the tendons, okay, get ready for contact. And so that pre-tension instantly creates that tighter spring. So I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna go here, strike, and shuffle back. Super simple drill that I repeat over and over and over and over again. Yep, and then I'll tell them to do it faster. Punch away, yeah. And I'll tell them try to strike. The foot's gonna look flat, but I'm putting pressure on that big toe joint so I can get a little bit of that calf and Achilles to spring me off the line.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can feel that from like here, like right here through here. Like if I'm just going. Yeah, that feels like I'm.
Yeah.
Being aware of that stuff is so. It's so key to then learning it, and I can even feel a little bit of, again, almost where I was feeling it in the first drill in my glute. So interesting to feel.
Yeah, and then I'll explain this, and then a lot of times I'll see a little bit of a disconnect of the athlete. I'm like, okay, why am I doing this? And I'll show them. Inside plant foot, if you use it right, your cuts will be so much more efficient because the outside leg has less work to do. And it kind of looks like, like anytime you see an athlete come in those, like any kind of change of direction that's at a certain speed, all you have to do is go pop, pop.
Yeah.
Get the feet in position, load it up right, and that's why I hammer this drill early on for the first month. And let's try it with some 1080 work too. Okay. This same drill, I'll use a 1080 or a simple bungee, because I want to overload that eccentric. I want to like make it pull them in a lot faster, because you'd be surprised, even young athletes, I'll do this with 11-year-olds and just obviously lighten the resistance, but they figure it out.
Yeah, really quickly.
They figure out really quickly that they can do, once I see that they're okay with the mechanics, I'll load it up, and then they do the same thing, just turn out to stop. And it's pulling me in.
Yeah.
It's not that heavy right now, but it's pulling me in enough to where I'm like, okay, I gotta be here, otherwise it's gonna get me off balance. Yeah. And then you do the same drill, kind of go, 1, 2, and just try and push back. And I repeat that, and I repeat that, and repeat that. And once we had that foundation, then I feel like, okay, now we can start doing more decel, reaction, ball toss drills, that kind of stuff.
Right, yeah.
But I don't want to do that stuff until I know that they have a good foundation here first. So you want to try it out?
I'm nervous, but I do want to try it.
It's not that heavy.
Okay.
It's not that heavy. So go right foot forward, okay? And just do the pause one first. Yep. Lean, get into it, fast, and pop, pop, pop. Yeah, good. Now try to come out of it. So you want to punch that right foot and shuffle out of it. Good. Do it faster. Good. Shuffle all the way back. Good. Get the idea?
I don't know the skill of shuffling.
Oh, that is a skill for sure. Good.
It's like a D-back skill. Were you a D-back or a receiver?
DB.
Okay.
Yeah, corner.
Yeah.
Right.
It's funny because I'm even thinking about this. Michael probably doesn't know this at all, or the realm of throwing. And I'm like thinking about how this can help throwers even.
Interesting.
Yeah, like this feeling and this tension, not that that has anything to do with this video, but I just had that come in because of the pre-tension.
Yeah.
Let's say you have somebody who commits. They're gonna come in 3 days a week for 6 months.
Yeah.
Take a simple drill like this. You're like, all right, we're going 10 kilograms. I wanna see like if the ground contact and the force production can increase over 6 months from this exact same drill with the exact same load. Is that something that you would look at?
Yeah, the 1080 does all of that.
And then you would measure that over
yeah.
as success if it obviously would improve. That's cool though. I like it a lot. And the thing is too, is like crazy. Is like I'm thinking about kids at home that you could tie a band to a basketball pole, an immovable object anywhere.
Yeah.
Put it around your waist and just sit there, boom, boom. Like almost.
I mean, it's. I love. I know you're a weight room guy. I love weight room too. It's essential for athletes. It's like, but if you think about that, how do you train this in the weight room?
Right.
It's a very specific skill, and so that's why.
Maybe a curtsy squat, but even
maybe, but it's those are all slow forces.
Yeah.
Slow eccentric. You can do slow eccentrics too, which is important. But man, to train it fast, you have to do the drills fast, and so. That's why the tension's not that heavy. It's pretty light, but it's enough to like load the system to help you get aware of it and to build up that eccentric force capabilities.
Right.
To improve your agility, head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store or the Apple iOS Store. Get on a program today to become that freak athlete. And remember, guys, you can take this information, you can take this drill specifically, and you can master that footwork through easy applied training. Okay, over and over and over again, you can learn those precise steps so that when you get out on that soccer field, when you get out on the football field, the lacrosse field, you can be as agile as possible. Because remember, freaks, if you want to become a champion, you've always got to cultivate your power. Peace.